Hey, what's up, mediums? It's season 2, episode 44. Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes, here as always with my co-host Scott Moon, and tonight we're joined by the USA Today best-selling author and Amazon top 10 science fiction author of the Black Fleet Trilogy, the Expansion Wars Trilogy, and the Omega Force series, Joshua Dalzelle. Josh started publishing back in 2013, and since then he has sold over 750,000 books. Tonight he's going to talk about creating and capitalizing on multiple entry points into your series. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here,
Josh. Good to have you, Josh. And Josh
squared.
Josh
squared. Josh squared episode.
Start the confusion right out of the gate.
Yeah.
When we had Scott Bartlett on, and so Scott and Scott, so we had a Scott squared, and so Scott took the pseudonym Dragon, which is kind of carried over into the following shows where Scott is
well thought out at all.
But you got to create an alter ego for if you're going to be.
I'm the
You're going to take a different name. You got to be a whole different person too for the show.
Call me the Dragon. And if we're going to follow with the Will Ferrell quotes, and that makes Josh Hayes, Black Hawk, or whatever it was. What was the brother? What, I can't remember the name of the movie even now. The Step Brothers.
The Step Brothers.
Black Hawk. Then that's my nickname.
No,
I don't even get to pick it.
No, they picked you some in the pre-show. I asked, and we had a couple of good nicknames.
Oh, apparently I'm Bomber now.
You're Bomber.
Oh, nicely done, Vicky. Bomber. I like that.
There you go. You're the Bomber.
It's not bad. Well, actually, it's maybe not with your new career.
Yeah, true, indeed.
Yeah, with 10 fingers.
Yeah, I still got all 10. We'll see tomorrow.
That'll be our new thing on the show. Prove you got 10 fingers.
Nice. Well, two things I want to point out really quickly before we get to what we've been up to this week. Number one, I read that entire intro without stopping and did not make a mistake. And number two,
I didn't interrupt you for the second week in a row during your intro,
which you just broke just then. And then number two, Lauren Moore, who has been doing a fantastic job on our blog posts, went above and beyond today and did the entire show notes doc for this episode and has phenomenal notes. I didn't even have to do anything. All I had to do is turn everything on and go. So Lauren, hats off. Very good. Thank you very much. Scott, what have you been up to, buddy?
Well, I started reading a new book, something different today. I from our pre-show, I understand you've read something I'm going to have to read. I'll let you talk about that.
Indeed.
I'm going to come around to you. I started reading Altered Carbon.
Great book.
Yeah, I had kind of a wild hair, and I've had it suggested a couple of times to write kind of a sci-fi detective noir type thing. And so I asked that question on a couple different Facebook pages, and Altered Carbon came up a lot. And there was a ton of ones that did. So I started with that one. I downloaded, started listening to it. Good narrator. So far, the story is really good. I like kind of the some of the over-the-top imagery in that noir first-person narrative. I don't always like first-person stuff for a long period of time, but it's coming out very well. So far, I'm very happy with it. So that's good. And then just writing and trying to get to work. Battling insomnia. That's obviously a good thing this week too. I've been having a lot of insomnia problems. I checked my Fitbit with the wife here a little bit ago, and basically, if you track when I'm not asleep, it's when I would be.
Oh, he just went all robot. He went straight robot.
Am I still robot?
Nope. There you go. You're good.
You're good.
Just a couple. But basically, and without going on too long about it, but what it shows is that I am waking up during the times when I've been trying to stay awake at work. When I'm driving around struggling to stay awake when I was working third shift, those are the times I now wake up at home and sit there for 2 hours going, I'm wide awake. So hopefully a couple more weeks and I'll be out of that, and then I'll be all happy and whatnot.
Nice.
So I think it's Josh's turn. And by Josh, I don't mean Bomber. I mean,
I love it. I'm going to get a shirt that says it.
Oh, yeah. That's going to stick. I have a feeling.
Yeah, it's a perfect nickname. It's the two-syllable. It's,
I like it. Bomber
Josh.
Okay. Oh, so it's my turn.
Yeah. Anything you want to talk about? You've been going on in your world.
I guess most exciting thing is I cracked the 10,000 word mark on the newest Blackfleet book today. So that means usually when I get to that point, it's like, okay, now we're official. We're in this project and we're in to win it. So, and once I get past 10,000, it kind of rolls. So I'll get my whiteboard outline all sketched out. So I feel like, now it's, full throttle. So that's my big time. And after, I think we've been in this house almost 2 years, finally getting the yard landscape. So that was good. I'm not doing it, but I watched some guy doing it. It looked exhausting. So it was.
I like where your head's at. Yeah, that's cool. Well, you and Josh are both white. Both the Joshes are whiteboarders, so we'll have to.
That's right. That's right. I actually have I did a what you call? It's not time lapse. Is it time lapse? Yes, time lapse. Video of me plotting out my latest short story on the board. That was pretty fun.
That was really cool. It made me feel mildly inadequate for my lack of technological expertise. But I watched it several times. It was great. What about you, Bomber? What'd you do? Tell us about your book.
Well, what did I do this week? I finished Red Rising, which I can't remember if I talked about the week before. I mentioned on the show previously I was reading Red Rising by Pierce Brown, the audio book, and I just finished it probably about 15 minutes before the show started, and it was phenomenal. I was telling you guys before we hit broadcast that there are very few books that you read that you get so into, like intense things happen and you get like blood pumping in your ears and you're like, holy crap, what's going on? And that happened probably like 5 or 6 times in this book, where I'm listening to it, driving to work, pulling into the parking lot, and then just sitting in my truck listening to it before I get out, because I need to listen to it. And Josh, you commented earlier before we started that it reminded you kind of like Hunger Games, and it is to a point, but it's a very visceral, a very violent, way more so than Hunger Games. Definitely not YA. It is definitely science fiction and adult in nature. There's a lot of violence and a lot of really mature themes. But man, was it phenomenally done.
And what makes you say YA? Is just because the age of some of the protagonists, or?
Well, that's why I say it's not YA, because the characters are young. They're 16, 17, 18. And so it's written from that character's point of view. It's a first person narrative. And he goes through some things, and they in this particular society, they grow up a lot faster. So 16 is grown for them. But it's still kind of, if you wanted to really say it is YA, because the characters are that age, but it's definitely not.
Right.
And Vicky says how much violence is too much violence. I don't know. There were definitely some points in this book where I was kind of cringing at what was going on, and not because it was like over the top, but just because of the description that he put into the book was just so, like I said, visceral. And I recommend, if you haven't read it, if it's on your reading to be read list, bump it up a couple notches. Yeah, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So, and other than that, I haven't done a whole much of anything. I had my first training day on my new assignment on the department, and we blew up cars and then grilled some hamburgers. So, I mean, it was pretty rough.
Like the way you guys work.
So anyway, we're talking about multiple entry points to a series. Josh, you've got a 9-book series in the Omega Force, and then several trilogies with your Blackfleet series, and your 9th book in the Omega series is still after, what did I say, 2.5 months, still's got the orange stripy goodness going on. So for
orange stripe badge from Amazon.
That's right.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise. I really 9 books. I didn't expect it to take off like that. That was like we talked about before. It was I did my usual gyrations of mailing lists and social media posts, and that series seems to be one that doesn't shed a lot of rears as it goes further on. It actually seems to be gaining. In fact, this 9th book was the strongest release, which is kind of counterintuitive to what you read or hear from people who have long-running series that know that after book 5, you're going to start kind of hemorrhaging readers if you can't get them out quickly. So it's and this is the first Omega book since last year, so it's
That's pretty interesting. I'd be curious to know if we had some of our big brain people in the audience with their data analysis or whatever to say how that works, because normally you do see a big first book and then they kind of level off for the rest of the series. Yeah, and that's what the Blackfleet trilogy.
Warship was the huge. I mean, that was the one that sat in the top 100 for 5 or 6 weeks, and then the next 2 books broke into the top 100, but they quickly dropped back down, and then we're getting ready. It was planned as a trilogy, and Podium asked, well, they're my audio publisher, asked, well, is there any more books? I'm like, well, I could probably expand the whole series, and that's when they suggested, well, let's break this up into multiple trilogies, because what you can do is you can remarket now your books with your sequels. You can market them as like, oh, it's book 1 of the Expansion War series, and that kind of generates a little more interest. And and just knowing that going in, you can write that to, like, when you go into the Expansion Wars, you kind of know something came before that, but it doesn't hinder your ability to read these books and get into the story. So it'll take. So this will be a planned 9-book series. This will be another trilogy after the Expansion Wars. So this gives me 3 inlets where if I can catch somebody in the first 3 books of each trilogy, then they may go back and buy the rest or keep moving forward if they start with the first one. So
I'd like to delve a little deeper into that as we go along, but maybe for our viewers that don't know anything about you or are just finding out about you, would you share a little bit about yourself and how you got started in writing?
Sure. Probably everybody else, I started writing pretty young, and so it was always a hobby thing. And probably around high school time, I started kind of flirting with daydreams of like, oh, maybe I could be a novelist, or and then when you take that first crack at actually writing a novel, it's like, oh, holy shit, that's hard. So it kind of goes on back burner. Went in the military and then kind of bounced around doing different stuff out of that, and the whole time I was always kind of writing. And I guess it was 2012. My fiance at the time bought me my first Kindle. And so that's when I started discovering ebooks and the $2.99 ebooks, things like that. And I remember reading Star Force by B.B. Larson. And then I went into other people's series. I was like, what the hell? How are these books this cheap? And then I happened to scroll up further and saw that it's like published with us. So kind of like, oh. And so that kind of opened a whole new world, because I was one of the guys that had, box of rejection letters and queried all the time and projects that were kind of half-baked. And there was no motivation to kind of keep them going for me, because you knew at the end of this journey of writing this novel and trying to self-edit and all this other, whatever I did, you're just going to send it off and get a bunch of rejection letters. So it's, but the ability to take it into my own hands, and so you're going to succeed or fail by your own merits, in theory, was exciting. And so it kind of reinvigorated my whole interest in trying to make this go. So that's, I wrote Omega Force, or Omega Rising was the first book. It took me 11 months, and it came out in, January 2013.
Yeah.
And Omega Rising, let's talk about that for a little bit before we move into the Black Fleet, because you've got 9 books in that series. Talk a little bit about it. What's the premise behind Omega Rising or the Omega Force?
It's very kind of classic themes. I always call it the A-Team in space, because it lets people know right away what they're getting. Actually, I was watching. I was writing something else. It was a deep cable channels, like 3 a.m. They had alternating back to back of like A-Team and Knight Rider, and I remember that kind of stuck with me. And then we went and watched a movie called The Losers, and I was like, that would be a fun sci-fi. And I know it's been done before, but that kind of ragtag mercenary team, where you have each guy has his own. You have a tech specialist and a medic and a guy who's a badass and the leader. And so I just kind of played off those themes and try to develop it from there. So,
yeah, that is cool. So, I always, whenever you say A-Team, I always think of the van. I don't know why. It's and Mr. T, of course.
So did you start out knowing that it was going to be kind of a long running thing, or did you just write that first one and
just wrote the first one. That's why it's not really branded like the others. Well, in fact, the title was a last minute switch too. I actually forget the original title was. The book was written, and it was going to be at the very end of the book. He went back home to Earth because he got kind of shanghaied and involved in all these things. And as I was getting ready to kind of pull a plug on it or put a fork in it and publish it, I changed the ending to like, well, let's leave a hook so it could go on if I wanted to. I have no idea what's going to happen. The whole point of that book was to successfully publish a book and experience that and see what. Because at the time I was kind of in a little isolated bubble. I didn't know what keyboards was. I didn't know that there was a whole community of other indie publishers out there that I could have tapped into. So I was just in my own little thing with a little crappy self-made cover and bad editing the first time out, just like, oh, let's see what the hell happens, throw it there. So you learn a couple bad lessons or hard lessons that way, and then you go back, and then once it got a little traction, that's the motivation you needed to go ahead and kick it and get the second book out quicker.
I'm curious, you say once it gets traction and kind of takes off, with that being your first book and not knowing it was going to take off and not obviously planning to jump into a second one, did you move on to something else, or how long did it take after you published it? Did you realize, hey, this is going to be a thing, I need to do something with this? It
was pretty quick by a massive stroke of luck. I had actually started on something else. I had a urban fantasy series that I still haven't finished. That I had started rolling the first book and thought, oh, this is something I'm really interested in. I'm going to do this next. And I'll diversify, because that in my mind seemed like a good idea. And so I didn't know was that Omega Rising had been read by Brian Keene, and he published a really, really nice review on his website about it. And the next, my sales were really, really climbing, and I didn't know why. And I'm like, oh, well, cool. Okay, so that's going well. So I'll just write the second I'll write an Omega Force book now, which was the second one, and we'll see what happens there. And it wasn't until the second book was out for a while before I found out what happened.
I think I remember reading a blog post about that or something, or maybe hearing another podcast, maybe about a year ago or something.
I think I talked about Simon Whistler's podcast.
That's probably
that's where I heard it.
Yeah, because now, and you didn't do a ton of like social media stuff in the beginning, or no keyboards, or
actually almost none. I mean, I grabbed a author page on Facebook and a Twitter account, and all the growth's been organic. And the same with the mailing list. I put links in the back of the book, and I think that does help out. It's slower because you're getting engagements by people finding you, right. But those people tend to stick with you better, I think. I don't lose a lot of, like, my unsubscribes are pretty low. So my mailing list is pretty small by most people. It's a 6,000 person mailing list, which is
6,000 people who actually open, read, and maybe even buy.
Right. They've all. I didn't solicit these, signups. They all went and actively clicked on the link at the back of the book to sign up. So,
and that's not from a free book reader magnet. That's just they bought your book, and at the end,
right.
they said, you know what, I'm going to go 2 more pages at the end of matter, and oh look, I can sign up for this newsletter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was no giveaways or anything. So even though it's not as expansive a list as some people have, it's always really solid. I know when I do my release on it, it's gonna push the book pretty far up right away.
There's been a lot of talk and I'm terrible at marketing, like most of us all say we are, but because that's the first thing every writer says, I'm terrible at marketing because it's so hard. But I've been listening to some presentations and stuff. I think at the Smart Artist they talked, and you were there, Josh. That they talked about having your list pruned down to the people who are actually interested in receiving your list, and just having a big list for the sake of numbers is not always the beat all to end all.
No, because you're paying to send those big blasts out every time. So if you're getting 13% clicks, like, is that or 13% opens? I mean, hell, that's not worth it.
Yeah. So. That's really cool that your readership is engaged, and having those, in your case, 6,000 true fans or whatever who probably going to jump on early on. That's awesome.
It makes it nicer. Like you said, we all say we're all bad at marketing, but we all listen to people like Chris Fox. Like, okay, well, somebody like him is really good at it. And you're like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing.
He's probably one of the smartest marketers I've ever listened to, and I'm sure that he writes some great books on it that I'd recommend. But I think even he would say that it takes work, and it's not a given thing. You can't use like what works now is not going to work 6 months from now.
No,
probably, except for just writing good books.
And the landscape changes so much. I mean, back when I started, I was right at the tail end of when people were doing the Kindle or the select free days switch to and that back and forth, so you get that push because you'd stay up in the paid side, your ranking be real high. And now we're looking at Kindle Unlimited and pay, and like just it's completely different now. And if you don't adapt or at least recognize it, it's like, wow, I was making good money, and now I don't know what the hell happened. So
yeah, you got to stay on your toes for sure. That's why it helps being part of a good community.
Yeah.
That helps each other out and stuff like that. So we were talking about Keystroke Medium is a great place to start. Probably tell everybody in the world that if they want to get into learn about this stuff, Keystroke Medium is where they should come, because they can hear lots of non sequiturs. And I've heard that. I actually looked that term up today because somebody used it in a book I was reading, and I was like, I kind of think I know what a non sequitur is since it's the story of my life, but I actually looked it up in the dictionary today. So fun fact, I did use a dictionary. So we're talking about Omega Force, the Omega Force series, and you have the Blackfeet and Blackfeet. God, I'm so
which would be cool too.
Can you edit that out? Yeah.
So I'm the Black Hawk, and then we're talking about the Blackfeet.
You're the Black Hawk bomber. All right. So what about? But now, what drove kind of maybe some of your shift to sci-fi or the space opera, space military things? And you mentioned, I think it was in the pre-show, about doing 2 series at once, and that jumping back and forth when you're working on them. Is that something?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. For me especially, I just Mega Force 9 just came out, and so now I'm working on book 3 of the Expansion Wars, which is in that Blackfleet universe. And so you'll first start, it's like, I'm going to dive right back in here. And you're like, shit, what the hell was that? You call things certain different things. The technology between the 2 series is totally different. Whereas Omega Force, I'd almost call space fantasy because it's very liberal with the wink and the nod. Just take my word for it. This is how it works.
I'm down with some space fantasy.
Which is where Blackfleet, you got me saying Blackfeet now. Blackfleet is, Blackfleet's a little hard. I wouldn't call it hard science fiction because anytime you introduce a warp drive, you're already out of the hard sci-fi category. Right. But everything else I try to base very grounded in what we know could work. So I kind of be careful going back and forth between the two. I found the audiobooks are nice because I can go back and listen to like Blackfleet was narrated by Mark Boyette. So I can listen to his voice. It's like, and get back into the story and not feel like I'm reading my own work for the 90th time. It's like, kill me now. So
he did a really good job because I just got done listening to about 15. I'm totally blanking out on the Ember Wars.
Luke Daniels.
Yeah.
So I mean, I literally hear Luke Daniels' voice in my sleep sometimes, and so I came out of that, and your narrator did a great job too. So the transition, you decided to write some space or something in the Blackfleet universe.
Yeah, the Blackfleet, the original trilogy came from what year did I write that whole story? It was between 1997 and 99. I was at Ellsworth Air Force Base, and the
so you were in the Air Force then.
Yeah, so it was kind of yeah.
Sorry, one of our loyal listeners immediately asked what branch.
Oh,
and I forgot to ask.
Aim high.
Are we still doing that, or I think we're now? You guys are Army of One, and
no. I'm Air Force, but
Air Force, and I'm just nothing. I'm just like a fanboy wannabe.
Oh no, Richard Fox was.
Richard's Army. We don't talk about that.
Yeah. Richard's Army. Craig Martell's the Marine Force.
Yeah.
And listening to those two guys talk because they had some of the same MOSs or occupational specialties is very entertaining. Everybody should do it at least once. I'll shut up now.
We should have like an armed services versus armed services episode of MSC.
That'd be awesome.
It's like the Army Navy game. My dad, he was in the he started in the Navy, then he went to the Air Force, then he finished in the Army. And so
Jesus.
yeah,
Seriously?
it's so every time the Army Navy game comes on, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna win this game," and I'm like, "No, you have to pick a winner before the game starts. You can't wait to the end and then say, yeah."
It's a winning. It's a good strategy. I like it.
Hey, you never lose. So
I'm sorry I interrupted your story. That was my
So
fault.
in 1997-ish.
what was I talking? Oh, okay. The original Black Fleet trilogy was actually one big long kind of. I think it was I thought would be like epic instead of epic fantasy. I was like, this will be epic sci-fi, and I think I've got it somewhere. I kept meaning to bring it out, and somebody wanted to read it. It's like it's pretty bad, but the bare bones of the story were still pretty good, and so I think I was rolled up on Megaforce 5 was finished up, and I thought it was time to try something different, and so I started Warship, and I decided like that big story, like let's chop it into a trilogy because you have 3 acts right here. So let's kind of divide it up and we can organize it that way. I feel like I was onto something with the title, which is another thing I kind of am on when people ask advice is, don't get too crazy with your titles. That your title along with the cover will sell a book. I mean, if you'll read a word, they're like, ooh, Warship. Okay, now I kind of already know what that's about. That makes me want to click on this link and just see what the blurb says. And then my cover artist had a nice, basic, simple, like one, the title's big, is one ship in the middle. And so it took off pretty well. Then the next 2 books did not, I think the trilogy altogether outsold the entire Megaforce series almost 3-1. So it was.
Wow.
When I first came into contact with your works and your writing, it was through the Black Fleet series, the first Warship.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just looking at it from a writer standpoint and going, this is really catching on. So it was, and then that's about the time I heard Simon Lister's podcast also.
Mm-hmm.
So it really did strike a chord with some people really liked it. So.
Yeah, if you look at the reviews have a nice, what I always talk about, the dished out, the curve, where you kind of, your first books, you kind of almost want to look like that. You want to have a lot of good 5 stars. Yeah, but you want some negatives too. Like, that means you're kind of hitting a decent segment of the market there. You don't want, now if you're dished out the other way where it's all 1 stars, when something happened, you need to go back and look at what went wrong. So
yeah,
but
there's a point when go ahead, Josh.
The Warship, you've got 1,432 reviews with 4.5 star average, and which is impressive to say the least. I think the average on Amazon for even really good selling novels is probably the 500 to 600 to 700 review range.
Yeah,
and I mean, you've doubled that with Warship. So I mean, that speaks to the sales and the popularity.
There are landmarks. There's like the 3-digit landmark and the 4-digit landmark and so on. They talk about that. They're completely arbitrary, I'm sure, but we were talking about reviews, and even though it's not exactly in line there, but we could talk a little bit about those gut punch reviews, because you ever get a review that you just don't look at reviews again for like 3 weeks because of the hardship it presents to your family.
Oh man, they used to shut me down, man. Like, it was my first start. I actually don't. I can honestly say, I know a lot of people say this, but I can honestly say I don't even read them anymore, because I don't think reading the overly positive ones are sometimes very healthy either. Mm-hmm. Especially because the books have now started to get a really loyal following to themselves. And so, like, when I see like 3 5-star reviews pop up 14 hours after it's published, it's like, well, if you really want to just have, bask in the adoration, then yeah. I used to read all the 1-star reviews. You're just like, oh, you stop right for the rest of the day. It's just like, that's brutal. You get a thick skin pretty quick, though.
Yeah.
That would be a fun segment for the show, though, is like the mean tweets thing, like make authors read their 1-star reviews.
Oh,
that would be good.
man.
I should have suggested that.
Crap.
That'd be a great episode. We'll do that. And
Their favorite 1-star review. That'd be horrible.
and we're gonna call it
Writing that down right now.
We're gonna call it 3 Grown Men Cry. Grown Men Crying on Keystroke Media. The best rated episode yet, except for or something.
Do it at the end of the show.
Oh, hey, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you have a favorite 1-star review that you can think of right off the top of your head that you can?
Well, yeah, but it's a cop out because my favorite one was for somebody had bought adult diapers and they didn't fit right, and left a 1-star review my book for it. So I know at least Omega Rising had hit the a certain age group. So.
we had somebody else that had a review like that. It's like, these Cheetos are stale or something. My favorite 1-star review, and it's not even on Amazon. I think it's my only review on one of my books on Nook. They didn't have books on it for very long, and it just says nope.
That's awesome.
I'm assuming that's entirely negative, and there's just not. They couldn't even. It was so bad that they couldn't.
They were so
bother.
pissed. They couldn't even type reviews.
I'm only punctuating this out of generosity, and it's excellent. But other than that,
yeah, the shorter 1 stars are the better ones because usually it's like Josh Dalzelle shat in my soul. It's like, oh my god.
Thanks for the colorful language. It's awesome.
How have we not come up with this segment before now?
Yeah. We'll do like, we should do
the Josh Dalzelle segment.
We should get like
that's a first.
Good timing.
Had a guest spit out his beer.
That should be a goal for every show. Well, I think we should, if we do this, the reviews, whatever your clever title there, Josh, we should have like see if we get like 8. How many people can we have? Can we have like a larger panel of 4 or 5 people on here? And
yeah, we could probably do that.
It could be basically just a whole show of just nothing but yucks, because I'm sure we get nothing done. Kind of like I'm not saying that. So you should probably do like an ad read or something, Josh, just to get us back into.
Well, before we do the ad read, I want to just touch on one of the questions that Lauren put in one of the show notes before we started, and that was concerning reviews. You do have a lot on your Warship series, the 1400 plus. Do you have any tips, or do you know, like, was that just a kind of a fluke thing getting that many reviews, or did you actually actively go in to try to get reviews?
I've never actively sought reviews because going back to the bad reviews, like, it's hard you can't guarantee there be good reviews. So like if you actively seek reviews, you might get a bunch of 2 stars. Like, well, I asked for it. If you look at all the rest of my books, that Warship is a bit of a fluke because all the rest of the books are between 300 and 600, and the Warship's at 1400. So it doesn't really correlate. So it was just the success of that particular book, I think, was the driver.
Right on. Well, we are at the halfway point, so I will do the ad read now, and I've got my cool little nope, I hit the wrong one. Hold on.
Good. See, I even did my part. My only purpose for being on the show today was to say, use the overlay.
So this episode of TNL is brought to you by Fortress Beta City by one of our most loyal fans, J.R. Hanley. This is the 2nd book in his Sleeping Legion
Go
series.
Army, right?
That's right. No, not Go Army. 35 years ago, Lance Scipio pulled most of Beta City into an emergency cryo freeze. Now he's awoken to a catastrophically chained world. It is 2601 AD, Tranquility 4, near the frontier of the White Knight Empire. Lance awakes to a world where unidentified Marines have raided his city. The enemy is occupying the unflooded portions, and as if that wasn't bad enough, the city is slowly dying. Lance must find a way to save his Marines. With true ingenuity, Lance and his Marines save the city and themselves. This tale tells of the will to push past merely surviving, where humanity fights thrive in this brave new world. You will love the drama as these resourceful Marines find a way out of every dire situation, all the while knowing the end result will be freedom or death. The Sleeping Legion is a breakneck new sequence of military science fiction novels set in the universe of the international best-selling series The Human Legion. You can find that on Amazon. The link will be in the show description. I'm also going to put it in the live chat here. And again, that is by J.R. Hanley. So if you're in the market for a new ebook, go ahead and check that one out. Do me a favor.
He's got quite a few that he's written.
He does have a pretty good series already established, so check it out.
Yeah, he's got really good branding on his covers because that comes up and you know right away. It's like, oh, okay, I've seen this.
Yeah,
that's definitely JR.
So very awesome, JR. Check out that book. You won't be disappointed. And now, speaking of a new book series, the second book, the second trilogy rather, in your Black Fleet series is the Expansion Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And you specifically went about that to do another trilogy because the Podium Publishing said, yeah, let's do this. So talk about the Expansion Wars a little bit and how it kind of brings new readers into the series and also ties them back into the original Black Fleet.
Okay, the story starts out with I bring a lot of the same characters over. The fact the main protagonist is still there, so it's a lot of the it's comfortable because like, oh, I know those characters from Black Fleet. It's the same captain and everything, but they're in different roles. And you start off by resisting the temptation to resurrect the enemy from the previous trilogy. It's like, oh, well, what if one of them survived? That's an easy way I can get this going again. It's like, well, no, because now you've tied back into, you know, these people don't know what's going on in the second trilogy now because they didn't read the first three. Mm-hmm. And you always kind of, when you're writing that, you have to always kind of keep in your mind, assume that whoever's reading this hasn't read the previous three books. And that, so you start with a whole new antagonist, a whole new story arc, and a whole new, you know, everything. And then when they get to the, you know, they let them see when they the books like, oh, okay, there was a Black Fleet trilogy before this, so I can go back and read this, but still not kind of be lost where I'm at here. If it makes sense what I'm saying, you can go continuously from 1 to 9 because there'll be, after Expansion Wars, there'll be Unification Wars, or you could start with Expansion Wars, or you can start with Unification Wars, and you're not going to really feel totally disoriented when you jump into it. And it's, you know, starting with a book 1 seems to help because if somebody hasn't really heard of you and you start with a book 7 and they see it's like, I don't want to read 6 books to get to this. I don't care how many good reviews it has. So
that's really cool. It's kind of a modular idea to a series. You know, take it in pieces. A lot of thrillers or like James Bond type movies. They're all basically standalones, but they're also a series.
Yeah,
you can get the best of both worlds. I like that. I actually read Jack Campbell's Lost Fleet, whichever one. I read the second one first, and it messed me up forever. And probably, but, I went back. I was like, oh, now I'm damaged.
You had to go into therapy.
Yeah, you know, but it kind of worked, I guess. And like my dad, he's famous for he'll read any trilogy from the middle. He doesn't care. Whichever book he has, he's like, I'm reading this one first, and then it goes back. So I like that. So
spoiler alert: Jack Campbell's going to be on the show on the 19th.
Oh, he is,
June,
which is going to be pretty dang cool. So, all right. So where are we at? We're talking about. Do we want to talk about some writing process? And this question keeps coming up in my head about Podium because I'm fascinated with Podium, and and Tantor and Audible and all those audiobook places. And I understand and I've seen James Tawn and some of his people speak a couple of times at conferences, and they seem like pretty good people, but they don't, as I understand it, you don't get to submit to Podium. They basically find you. Is that correct?
That's how it worked for me. I don't know if you can solicit them.
I don't think you can. I thought that they only do it because they have, I think the James Tawn's partner, I can't remember his name, but he has some sort of like PhD in linguistics.
Greg.
Yeah, something fancy, and they really do put a lot of thought in matching the story to the narrator.
Yeah.
So
I imagine if you're selling a ton of ebooks, if you approach him. I mean, I don't like blind submit a book, but I bet if you approach him and said like, I've, start off with, I've sold 20,000 in this book, you're like, oh, well,
You
let's
have my
talk.
attention.
So yeah, exactly. But yeah, they came to me about Black Fleet, and then so audiobooks were something I wasn't interested in. Because I wasn't going to do the ACX. I didn't have I was like, that's a time suck. I didn't know that what a big segment of the market it was. I didn't really do a lot of research in it, and so I sold the rights to Podium for Black Fleet, and then Audible Studios has Omega Force, and I can't believe how, because they're a whole different customers. So it's not like your readers go out and buy the audiobook also. It's a whole group of people that are just voracious audio customers, and you'd be amazed. I get more feedback on my Facebook page when a new release comes out is when's audio come out. It's like, well, it's going to be a while because the publisher's seen it just now. So
yeah,
but yeah, they came to me, and the offer was, I talked around people because that's why I'd actually had other friends in the publishing industry, and they said it's pretty standard. So I was like, okay, it's fair enough, and it's worked out really well. I appreciate, like I said, they match Mark to the series, and he's done a phenomenal job. They promote really well. The people are anytime I have a question, I can email and it comes right back. So it's been pretty good.
That's I expected, almost didn't ask the question because I anticipated it being a good experience from everything I've heard from people about that. So
that was why I was at the summit in Austin. Was they paid for my way in, so because they were having just to get together, I guess, different authors. I think that was why Richard was down there too.
If I remember right, I can't remember if they said that during the conference, but basically the SPP guys, they offered to pay them to come talk last year or the year before.
Yeah.
And they said, well, instead of paying us whatever, we need 10 tickets for people we think would be a good fit to come to this conference. So
yeah, I couldn't go last year. I think James spoke last year, and then Greg was here this year.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well, I'm a huge audiobook junkie, so anything that has an audiobook, I will devour. I just apparently I bought Warship as an ebook a long time ago, but I just added the audiobook narration, and I just picked up the New Frontiers audiobook too.
That's another super cool thing is that WhisperSync, if it's working on books, is
WhisperSync is a couple bucks and you get the audiobook too. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I like to actually watch it, read it to me, especially if I'm really interested in a writer's style. Watch the words go by and really just kind of total immersion.
So you mentioned, Scott, wanting to talk about process, so let's get into that a little bit and try to hit a little kind of the business side and maybe just the process side of writing. You Omega Force rather is a 9-book series. Excuse me. And now you've got 2 trilogies and maybe a third one coming out after that. You mentioned having a whiteboard before. Now that you're kind of an established name and you've got these series going on, I imagine that you do some type of overall series plotting. Do you want to talk about how you go about writing your books and how you keep all that stuff kind of in your head and fresh and straight?
Sure. First thing I'll recommend to anybody that does a series is notebooks. Anything, even inconsequential facts that you think that might not be, I just like, okay, sci-fi especially, a word or a place or a name you've made up, just jot it down, because there's going to come a time where you're like, what the hell did I call that, or who was that guy? But when I got the office and got to have a big whiteboard, this thing's like 6 foot on the one wall, and being able to visually draw the arc out and I have little tick marks that are word count marks of beats I want to hit. So by 30,000 words, I need this event to have happened to make sure I'm at my 85,000 word goal, and I'm not going to either blow over or be way short. And that was always the biggest challenge to me, is if you're just kind of doing it, just typing every day without any kind of, for me anyway, visual cues, or knowing that certain events have to happen at certain times in this book. My tendency was I'd start to get to the peak in the action. It's like, okay, so the book could be 80,000 words. I'm getting to the peak in the action. It's already 70,000. It's like, shit, this would be a 100,000 word book. I have to chop a lot of it out. So.
Yeah. I like that. So you're talking about outlining chapter by chapter, beat by beat, or you have your landmarks you want to hit, or how
Typically on the web part, I just do major landmarks, and then I have what's kind of I guess like you call it a living outline, and there'll be all these printouts all on my desk of that I'll do on the iPad, just sitting there. It'll be like, chapter 12 on or 30,000 words on, because you always, as you're writing a book, I don't like to stay too rigid into a plan, because the ideas will come to you and it's like, well, wait a minute, I have a plan, so throw that idea in the garbage. Because sometimes like, oh, here's a good idea, so you'll veer off a little bit, and that does change the direction you're going. But just make sure you keep it organized so you don't get to the end and be like, oh, these two ends don't meet up together. So.
Yeah. That's definitely, I've done it both ways. I've found myself writing myself, because I started out very much as a pantser or a gardener, however you want to call it, and wrote myself into corners. And then I thought, I'll fix that by being a rigid outliner. And then I wrote myself into corners with the outline. So I guess you got to find your way in the world.
With different series, the way you have them set up, trilogy, do you use the same characters, and do you have kind of overlapping events, or how do you work that?
Yeah, there's overlapping events. Like right now in Expansion Wars, in books 1 through 3, which was the Blackfleet trilogy, it was the Phage War. That was the big event. In the Expansion Wars, that event's referenced often, but as like a historical thing, and that gives you the ability to go back and explain things through narration or dialogue to your reader. The characters, since it's a linear timeline, I can have my characters kind of age and be replaced by younger characters in the first book. So the book I'm doing right now, my mainline officers, my captains and my, first officers stuff were all, ensigns and lieutenants in the first book, and they've advanced up through. And so that keeps continuity that way. So
do your fans like that? It seemed like that would be something that would be interesting to see those minor characters kind of.
I found for the readers of this series, they really do. The Omega Force series it started out supposed to be something different. That's why if you look there's no number, there's no, number 9 or whatever the book covers. It was just the title. Because I was kind of trying to do this like Lewis and Moore thing, where it's like each book's just its own standalone adventure, and you can read them all. It didn't work out the way. I ended up doing a timeline with that too. Mm-hmm. But those guys through 9 books don't really age that much. They're still the same immature idiots that they were in book 1. So there's that constant, it's like the Peter Pan syndrome all the way through, like what Clark Chamberlain talks about. And so, but in the Blackfleet stuff, they do age and get replaced, and people, move on in life. So
kind of like the host of Keystroke Medium. We basically never do. Keep on.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey. So when you write, do you write in Word? Do you write in Scrivener?
I write in Word. That's just it's something I'm really comfortable with. I do use Scrivener because I have 2 monitors, so I'll put Scrivener on the second monitor because it's awesome to take notes in and organize in.
Right.
But I use Word because we do track changes. And it's a lot easier to pass the file back and forth with track changes on, to do it that way, to know, because I can go through and look at her strikeouts through red in the notes she leaves, and then I can click back and forth between revision and original and see what I like better and things like that. So I've never really figured out. I know there's tutorials in Scrivener, and I kind of one of those people who buy something. It's like, if I can't make it work in 10 minutes, I hit it with a rock. And so I figured out. I actually bought it first for the conversion factor of it, but yeah, the notes and organization, the outlines and stuff like that are really good on it, though.
I have stopped.
Josh and complain, and he fixes my.
I have stopped Scott a number of times from throwing rocks.
This is true.
At his equipment, he throws rocks at iPads and iMacs and laptops.
We can have a profanity-laced, screenshot thing of all the text messages I've sent you about something.
Well, I was in the Air Force. I worked avionics in the Air Force, and I was an engineer for aerospace firms. But then when I come home, if my electronics at home don't work, I just become enraged. And it's like, what the? Oh, yeah. Why does it? So,
yes.
Just smash it on the floor.
It should work. It worked 5 minutes ago.
Yep.
I think that, yeah. So,
well, we were talking about characters a little bit ago. That might segue into your favorite question, Scott.
My favorite question is, do you have a non-primary character who's one of your favorites to write? Secondary character that you just really enjoy working with?
Yeah, I had 2. Main one, I guess, though, in the Omega Force series, he's his name's actually Felix, but they call him Crusher. And he's a alien he's 7 foot tall, 320 pounds, short fuse temper. He's the soldier of the group, and he's kind of a gifted warrior, but a little dense, but good sense of humor, heavy drinker. So it's always, anytime you can work him into a scene if there's alcohol involved, or if there's another character that's a small smart ass that kind of gets him going all the time. So it's always entertaining. And my narrator for that series, Paul Heitch, does the voice really well. So
fun and hijinks ensue.
Yeah.
7 foot tall mixed martial arts badass with some beers in them. Kind of like Bomber. At the range.
Look, Bomber just took a beer-filled selfie while Josh was talking. And, J.R. Hanley asks in the chat, what are your thoughts on anthologies for newer authors?
Definitely. Is that, that's something else we could talk about. There was an anthology I was in, Stars and Empire, and it was one of the, not the first, or well, I guess that's the first time, but not the last time that Nick Webb had stepped in and pushed my career forward against me digging my heels in. And yeah, I need to buy him dinner sometime somewhere. But yeah, that Stars and Empire project did, the whole goal was we were going to try to get on the USA Today list, and that was but it drew a lot of eyeballs because people looked at Omega Rising as kind of like, I don't know, it looks a little too corny for me. I don't want to try it. But they buy a part of an anthology and they read a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm into it. And I did get a lot of sell through on that. It can be really, really useful. I would say that there's a fine line between diversifying too much in anthology and then just having an anthology that people that you know is going to be your readers reading this and they've already read your book. So,
yeah. Do you participate in many anthologies now, or do you mostly focus on your own stuff?
Mostly my own stuff, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just because I've got 2 series I'm working on, and I've got more I actually want to put out. I've got a standalone that we're working on after this next Black Fleet book, and then there's going to be an Omega Force series spinoff. So it's like to try to commit to even a 50,000 word short. It's like, oh man, that's gonna be tough. So, and I hate missing a deadline for somebody else's project where we're like, well, here's our date. And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I blew it by a month, and everybody's waiting on me.
and you have fans that want stuff, and you should probably, it'd be in everybody's best interest to get it out there.
We're talking about some stuff, maybe not necessarily anthologies. I know JL and I have kicked around the idea of maybe doing a project and bringing in 1 or 2 other people where it's the kind of the same event, but 4 writers writing the same event through 4 different character POVs and something like that, where just as kind of interesting, because 4 different people, 4 different styles, 4 different characters, but it's all describing the same thing that they were experiencing.
So talking about a little bit about process, you're full time now, so what's your writing schedule look like?
Typically I get up, my wife goes to work around, she leaves the house about 8, so I'm up by the time I get coffee, sit down, and that first thing right in the morning is I'll try to get 1,000 words, just get something down and get your fingers going and get your mind flowing. And so I'll sit till about 10:30, and then no matter how much I've done at 10:30, I'll get up and I'll go do something else for a little bit and then come back. And usually at that point, I'll just sit until I hit my word count, which is usually, I try to get between 3,000 and 5,000 words a day. Much more than that, realistically, it's usually 3. On a good day, it's 5. I know there's some people that can go way past that. If I've tried to do 8,000 word days, and my brain just turns to mush. I mean, you're just typing words, and you've pushed past your imagination, and it's just a bunch of crap on paper you have to delete the next day.
I think there's a point of diminishing returns for most people. Now, there's obviously some people who like to binge write all day long. I ran into a few of them that will just.
And some people are really good at it too. I'm not one of them. So
yeah,
I think the most I've ever hit in a day is probably right around 4,400. And man, I By the end of the day, I felt like I'd run a marathon.
And that's on average. I mean, like right now, I'm a slow starter. When I first started a book, like I thought, like I've had some like 500 word days. Like, all right, that was good, everybody. Let's go.
Those were the right 500 words. Everybody, let's party.
Those are perfect words. And then by the end, it's that sprint to the end where it's like 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 words a day. And then you're still like, it's 2 a.m. I can get this done real quick.
I went to the Oklahoma Writers Federation Incorporated, which Vicki Malone Kennedy, one of our guests, is the organizer of. And there was a guy there named Mel Odom, and he's a great speaker, by the way, if you ever have a chance. I think he teaches at OU now, and he teaches based solely on his ability to write science fiction. But he works in binge things, and he says he'd work like 12, 15 hours a day for like a week and a half, and then move on to the next project. But I guess that works for him. But that would kill me. I
couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Richard Fox asks, what's the most military and joke you've worked into a novel?
Other than Bomber.
Oh, I don't know. There's always little Easter eggs you put in where people in the service are like, I remember that.
I know that Richard, he asked that in his books. He's real good with putting in different quotes, Chuck Norris quotes. I caught a couple of those, and I think some military stuff. And
Chuck Norris was in the Air Force.
That makes no sense, because why would we even need an Air Force if we had Chuck Norris?
That's the time we didn't really do a lot.
That's why you guys just hang out. You just let Chuck take care of it.
Hang out in the air conditioning and have the chair force. Absolutely, the chair force. Johnny Canuck asks, where do you get your inspiration for all your writing?
I mean, just everyday situations you'll find. You always just see little things that'll kind of turn into scenes. And that's what I always kind of tell people who ask, try not to look at projects so huge. My sister's kind of working on something right now, and she's doing the same thing. That first time novel writer's like, holy shit, novel's big. It's like, we'll just look at then what's next, then what's next, then what happens. So there'll always be like kind of little cool scenes floating around. Like, I'll see something like an air show, like a maneuvered aircraft does. And it's like, oh, that'd be cool if you worked. And then that kind of snowballs into, an action scene. So.
Ken Lazito asks, are you doing anything to improve your craft, or what have you done since beginning your writing, your journey to
medium show?
Other than coming on this show, which is a huge step in your career.
That's a big step.
Which was a big step for me. I'm always, you never want to be stagnant or ever think that you know everything. Right now, I'm actually enrolled in Clark Chamberlain's was the Punch Him in the Gut course. Just to show it. I don't know if you can.
Oh yeah,
Punch Him in the Gut by Clark Chamberlain.
So it's an online course. Once he gets it fully up and running, because I think we're the guinea pig class right now, I'd highly recommend it. But just how to build more dynamic characters, build stories that emotionally connect to the readership, and just things that not necessarily have to do with business or marketing, but it's like, okay, this is going to help me be a better writer and write better stories. I know when we were at lunch, Scott, we were talking about the project I'm going to start this year. It's been an idea I've had on back burner for 5-6 years. I just never thought, it's like, I know I'm not good enough writer to attempt this yet. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that you don't want to take a swing at it and miss, or whiff it into the stands. It's like, well, okay, I messed that up, and it's hard to go back and
foul ball,
unscrew that. So I think I'm at the point now where it's like, okay, we'll take a crack at it and see what happens. But yeah, I'm always, any kind of classes or seminars or things like that, or even just other people's writing. There's a couple other people you'll read, and it just breaks your heart. You're like, oh God, I suck so bad. Look at how this guy writes. So
it's amazing. And Clark does a great job. We talked about that, and obviously you're an excellent writer. And but I find it inspiring to know how many people I know who are writers who continue to improve their craft. That's pretty big. So I see in here that Richard says it's important for us all to know how tall Josh, not Josh the Bomber is. And so we'll tell a story about how I met.
I'm standing and I'm not any taller than you guys, right?
Yeah, we're all the same height on the internet, right? But when I met Josh Dalzelle, I didn't know exactly what you looked like because it's just seen just a couple of pictures. You don't have a ton of stuff online throwing your face out there in front of everybody. But I remember I was standing there and I was kind of in your way. And then
as Scott,
I'm just bumbling around like a dork, like always. And I said, "Oh, excuse me." And I think we introduced each other and I realized who you were. I was like, "It's Josh Dalzelle." Like, oh, crap. And Richard Fox and Chris Fox, and they're like, "Hey, let's all go to lunch." I'm like, "I'm just gonna follow along."
I was trying to turn you around. You thought you were in the way, and I was trying to turn you around so I could shake your hand because I recognized you. I introduced myself, and you're like, I'm sorry. I'm like,
I know. See, that awkwardness is my brand. So stuff right there. That was
what's
good.
funny is Scott and I went to OWFI 2 years ago, and that was our first conference that we'd gone to together. And and after one of the first nights we were there, we were like, okay, if we get into an awkward situation, we need to like figure out something. Like we need to have some kind of signal,
code word or signal.
And we look at each other, and if I'm getting in an awkward situation, you need to do something. So we were riding down to the elevator, and right before the elevator door opened, I came up with a great idea. I was like, if you get in trouble, this is what you're gonna do. You got to be like, "Caca!" and just do that. Just do that. If you get in trouble, just do that, and I'll know that we need to do something different.
And then I laughed a lot. I was like crying as we're walking around the conference. It's good times. So.
Well, we are coming to the end of the hour, and this has been an enormously fun show. I do want to ask, because we like to ask a lot of people that are successful now, is there something that you know now that you wish you would have known when you first started out, or what you would have done differently first starting out that you share to some of our aspiring authors?
Yeah, don't be shy about reaching out. If you see people that are doing well, or you see people that do something you want to do, people are really, really nice in this business. For the vast majority of them. I mean, if you reach out, send an email. I mean, a lot of people, they'll get back to you. I know Hugh Halley was famous about like, well, here, just give me your phone, call you back type thing, and help you work through things. Also, if you're the first couple times, I know that anxiousness of getting it out, but the mistakes I made were, crappy cover and poor editing the first one. If I could go back and take that back, I definitely would, even if it meant kind of delaying the release. But
well, then there's so many avenues now where you can get a very nice pre-made cover for $50.
Yeah,
you don't have to depend on your elite Microsoft Paint skills. And invest in the money. You don't have to invest thousands of dollars, but invest a little bit of money.
No, I still don't. I mean, my covers are, I think I pay $300 a pop for my covers right now. I mean, they're all custom made. Well, they're custom made with stock imagery like a lot of us do, but I still don't pay thousands of dollars for covers.
Some of my best performing covers that I have on mine are my least expensive, but I did have somebody else do them because I'm not as skilled with that sort of thing. Josh, the bomber, actually does some pretty good Photoshop. With,
I have dabbled, but I am not an elite Photoshopper.
You got to spend more time on the show and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight, man. We really appreciate you taking the time and coming out on the show and spending time with us.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It was fun.
And practically already agreeing to come back on again to do the what was our bad quotes?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think I might be obligated to do the first one. This is my shitty idea.
If you guys didn't know this, Josh Dalzelle volunteered to host our 1-star review special coming at an undisclosed time. So thanks, Josh, for agreeing to host that.
The subtitle is "Grown Men Crying."
Grown Men Crying. The
and women crying about their books, depending on who we have on.
Oh man! Well, hey, everybody that hang out with us tonight on the live chat, thank you so much for hanging out with us. It's been a blast as always to read your comments and interact with you, crazy people. Let us know what you thought about the show. Let us know in the comments. Check us out on the website. Leave us a comment on the blog. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Leave us a thumbs up. It helps us get a little bit visibility. Tell a friend. Absolutely. We have Chuck Manley coming up on Monday, and then MD Cooper on TNL next week, and then Neil Asher will be here on the 12th. So that will be a fun show. You need to come and hang out for those. So for Scott Moon, I am Josh Hayes. We have been live with Joshua Dalzelle on Thursday night. Make sure you come back next time where we talk about a little reading. We're going to talk about a little writing, and of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. You guys have a great night.
Thanks.